Meet Donna Adelson from Coral Springs, Florida. I want to hear all about you, Donna. Let's go.
Well, I'm a domestic coordinator.
A domestic coordinator?
Yes. I'm responsible for the activities, classes, and lessons of my son Robert, who is 16, Charlie, who is 12, Wendy, who is 10, my husband Harvey, who's in the audience, and my dog Sam.
All right. And how old is Sam?
5.
5. Well, good. Give him our best. Nice to have you here. And this vowels worth nothing. Consonants are going to be worth. Can we get 800? We can. All right. So I'm writing on this. Again, person is a category. Stu, still your turn. Letter, please. L. Nope, no L. Donna.
M.
Yes, there are 2 M's. Let them come up. You have 5 seconds. Person. Alan. K. Yes, K.
Mustard maker.
Nope,
Mustard
still not.
maker.
Stu. H, please. Yes, there's 1 H. Time starts now. Person. Donna.
F.
Yes.
Mischief maker.
Yeah, that's.
Nice.
You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record.
Okay, how is everybody? Aristotle, hello. Myrna, Wesley loves Octoberfest. Jennifer Ray, Taterbug, Carmel O'Reilly, Raise the Road, Watercolor. Hello, hello, hello. Ain't no holla back, gal. Hello. So I wanted to talk about Georgia Cappleman's amazing closing argument. She's so good at doing these closing arguments. In Donna Adelson's trial for the murder of FSU law professor Dan Markel, of which she was convicted. Thank you to everyone who watched all 12 hours of the live stream with me on Thursday. It was quite something. No? So you hung out with me for closing arguments and then verdict watch, and we got a verdict about 3 hours and 20 minutes of jury deliberation. Georgia Cappleman has said that she was surprised it wasn't faster. I mean, how much? I think she's just getting greedy. How much faster do you want it than 3 hours with this kind of case, a very circumstantial case? And I have to say, with working with nothing, so don't get me wrong, Jackie Fulford's closing argument wasn't terrible working with nothing, okay? It was completely manipulative and untrue, but that's what defense attorneys do. I don't know. I thought it was rather creative and inventive and not terrible. I mean, it kind of falls apart at the end, but started out better than it finished. But nothing compared to Georgia Cappleman's closing argument. She's so good at these closing arguments. What she does is she's such a good explainer. She could have been a teacher, really, Georgia Cappleman. And she goes from the beginning of the case. We're not going to start all the way. It's 2 hours. So we're not going to start all the way at the beginning to all the way at the end. We just won't make it through. I'm not prepared for another 12-hour live stream, but this will be a long one, but just not quite that long. So she starts off refuting the defense's argument that the divorce was no big deal, that the litigation around the divorce was no big deal to Donna Adelson or Wendy Adelson, that Donna didn't care, that it was over. This is a similar argument to Dan Rashbaum tried to make the same argument and say, look, this was finalized. She just had to accept what the court said and move on. And look what she sent her life coach, that she was happy in Tallahassee, strangely. Seemed like she was kind of making another alibi for herself, that she was happy in Tallahassee and wanted to stay there. I don't know about that. Hey, Wesley loves Octoberfest. Thank you so much for gifting 10 memberships. They will be handed out at random. Appreciate that. Appreciate your support of this channel. So much of this channel, all of the channel really is supported by you guys. This is not a huge channel. It's mostly listener supported. So I appreciate the gifted memberships very much. So going on. So we have about 40 minutes in the opening of how important this relocation was. And I have heard some things from my little birdie sources out there that I want to correct. So Gary Cohen is a lawyer. Let me see. I sent this to myself, but I didn't pull it up. I am so sorry. Please hold. So Gary Cohen is a lawyer, but he's also very close friends with the Adelson family. And he was going to give Wendy a job. Now, Robert Adelson testified that Donna told him, meaning Robert Adelson, that Gary Cohen, this is this lawyer and friend of the Adelson family, I think pretty much Harvey Adelson's best friend, from what I understand, that Donna, okay, hold on, I'm getting all tripped up. So that Wendy was being offered a $1 million job and partnership right away. And you heard me scratching my head at that on air going, really? Someone in Donna's position? I mean, if you're a high-powered lawyer, maybe a firm will offer you partnership right away. But it's pretty rare. It's usually something with Wendy's stature as a lawyer that they want you to work for. So maybe Donna had told Robert that she would become partner very quickly, and that his memory, this is, 11 years ago, that maybe even longer, 12 years ago, that he put it as that she would be given $1 million in partnership. When I hear she was offered $200,000, and I'll tell you what I'm wondering about it, and eventually I would think Donna was saying she'll be partner very quickly. I think that's what he heard. My sources say she was offered $200,000, not $1 million. So that was probably just his poor remembrance, or she could be making. So Gary Cohen works he's a medical malpractice lawyer. Let me just show you here. He was in Boca Raton magazine, and he must have grown up in Brooklyn with Harvey, I assume. Hold on one sec. I'll pull it up. So here he is, the expert in advocating for injury victims. There's Gary Cohen. And since joining Grossman, Roth, Yaffa, and Cohen, so he became a partner in 1995. Gary Cohen, partner, has played an integral role in its success as premier trial law firm in Miami and Boca Raton, winning millions of dollars in rightful compensation for clients. Attorney Cohen has been practicing medical malpractice law in Florida for more than 40 years. So maybe, I don't know how they work out these winnings that Wendy would have won for people had she worked for Gary Cohen's law firm, and had they not rescinded their offer after Dan Markel was killed. My theory on it is that they didn't want a potential murderer or an accused murderer working at the firm. They didn't want to have to worry that one of their lawyers was going to be pulled out of the firm in handcuffs, and that Grossman, Roth, Yaffa, and Cohen would be making the papers for hiring a murderer as a lawyer on their law staff. So I would think that the way that Donna figured she would be making $1 million is that she would get some of these winnings. Some would go to the practice, some go to the lawyer. And in addition to your salary, maybe bonuses and winnings and stuff. So he is a nationally recognized expert in that area, and he's experienced and dedicated. He says, I thought this was really interesting. Maybe I'll do a whole thing on him, but I have covered him before. What he says in a different interview that I read is that the rich always have an advantage. I was like, oh boy, isn't that true? But that is just a little correction for the record about Gary Cohen getting into Georgia Cappleman's closing argument. So she starts with proving that this was a big deal to Donna, it was a big deal to Wendy, that they desperately wanted her to move. And it was about 40 plus minutes of debunking the defense's argument that it was no big deal. That's where we're going to start. Here is Georgia Cappleman's really pretty brilliant closing in Donna Adelson's trial.
Wow, is he on drugs? Is he also going to pay $70K plus the legal fees and interest that bastard owes you? So the bad blood is going strong here 6 months before the murder, and the divorce wasn't really final anyway, in the sense that we're continuing to have pleadings get filed back and forth. In February of 2014, Dan Markel emails Wendy threatening to file motions exposing her for what he said was hiding assets, $200,000 worth of assets from the court, and giving false testimony under oath. And also to accuse her attorney of misconduct. Her lawyer witnesses say none of that's a big deal, then none of that was going to be successful, but he thought it was going to be successful. To him, it's a lot of money. To him, it's a big deal. The next day, on February 15th, 2014, we see a text from the defendant to Charlie. Wendy's totally stressed out. Yesterday was a rough one. She will probably have to go through another depot. Outrageous. Rob Adelson testified that his mother told him they were, quote, depoting Wendy to death. But then their expert witness got up there and said Wendy was never deposed. I guess they didn't provide her with that information or any of these emails or text messages post July 31st, because this thing was not over on July 31st. In this text, defendant accuses Dan Markel of stalking Wendy, and Charlie agrees. The defendant tells Charlie to keep the conversation with Wendy light and don't bring up the divorce drama, which kind of implies there was divorce drama going on. There's a sense in this email and elsewhere in the evidence that defendant and Charlie have to tiptoe around Wendy, like she's this damsel in distress that needs the two of them to step in and help her handle her business. On February 17th, 2024, defendant again reports to Charlie how Wendy's hearing went and talks about how there are plans to seek to have Dan Markell forced to submit to psychological testing. Here, defendant is 7 months after the divorce and just 5.
So this is all about how important this divorce and winning. It's something that I've talked about very much on this channel, how important winning is to the Adelson family. So any kind of negotiating, giving up a little something is considered losing. You have to win totally. And I have I think I have another whole show just talking about Donna Adelson's reaction to the verdict. It was so interesting. I think we watched it 3 times. I have a lot to say about what I think she was doing with that, because there were no tears until I think prison was mentioned with the victim impact statements, where the idea that she's going to prison, which is nothing like Leon County Jail, let me tell you. Leon County is from a pretty good jail, from pretty nice place comparatively to a lot of the jails and prisons around. And she's going to be, she's a committed murder. So I would think it would be pretty high
months
security.
Before the murder, responding to Dan Markell's filing a request to produce. And she says, it's time to give it to him. Let's aggravate him the way he's trying to aggravate you. And
let's aggravate him the way he's trying to aggravate you. And this is all her crazy ideas. They put this, the defense said this was just like not nice words. Myrna Sultana says, you're the best, Roberta. I love those encouraging words. Thank you so much. I'll take any encouragement I can get. There is a new short I just put up in the short section of my channel about Donna Adelson and her miraculous healing of her hearing on the last day of trial. Miraculously, she seemed to regain her hearing. It's a fun one. Check it out, please, and share it, and please hit the like on it.
What can your attorney do to be proactive to give him some grief? Can't you meet with her and work out a plan of attack? Something has to be done with this asshole. This is 5 months before the murder. Here, defendant texts Charlie about Wendy yet again. If you speak to Wendy today, tread lightly. Don't ask questions about the depot, her lawyer, etc. Tough time, and she's really stressed out. The asshole showed up at soccer yesterday, and she goes into a story about, he showed up at soccer and they got into it. And then she ends with such a fucker. Super amicable. Then we have this text on March 4th, switching gears. This is about the birthday gift. Defendant texts Charlie that she's going to call him from the bathroom in Gainesville where she can have some privacy. Please pick up because I will have very limited alone time today. Erase this text after you read it. Then the defendant says, we'll speak privately about Dad's birthday gift. So erase after reading. You might think, well, maybe she was just trying to keep the birthday gift a surprise. But why does Charlie need to erase it? Harvey's not with Charlie. Harvey's with Donna. And according to Rob, there were no birthday gifts for Harvey unless the murder was supposed to be the birthday gift. Plus, in the text, Donna wants Charlie to delete after reading the text that doesn't mention the birthday. She doesn't say anything about deleting the one that does mention the birthday. Rob Adelson was present at the birthday party, which did take place between the 2 trips that the hitmen took to Tallahassee. And there were no birthday gifts, according to him. The defense suggests that the friends coming to the to the party was part of the surprise, but then they also suggest that Harvey sent the Evite, so I don't think they can have it both ways. You can't send the invitations and be surprised by the friends. The next week, Jeff Lacoste, Wendy Adelson, Catherine Magbano, and Charlie Adelson all go out to dinner. That's the first meeting between Wendy and Jeff and Catherine Magbano. At dinner, Magbano mentions her ex having several run-ins with law enforcement that stuck out to Mr. Lacoste. After dinner in the hot tub, Charlie bragged about having connections to people on the wrong side of the tracks. Notable in the same time frame, March 21st, 2014, the defendant signs a lease on a condo in South Beach, a condo where Wendy, after Dan's killed, would move in with her kids. They say, oh, that was a weekend place, so it's pretty convenient timing. You just happen to get this other house and have it set up for Wendy to move into after her ex-husband's murdered, and she's able to relocate. 3/26/14.
Wow. Condo all ready to settle in. Yeah, Patty's done a deep dive into all this stuff about Wendy's moving and her real estate. That's her field.
This is when Dan Markel officially files the grandma motion, which takes aim at the defendant raising more allegations about failure to comply with the Skype thing, Wendy leaving the boys with her parents rather than giving him the right of first refusal. And he says by flouting the right of first refusal, the former wife creates conditions for Mr. Markel to be disparaged in the presence of the children by their maternal grandmother. Dan Markel then alleges all the same allegations about the defendant disparaging him to the kids that he outlined in that previous email in December. Contrary to what the defense said in court, in his prayer.
Also, one of the things she did really well, too, in the beginning, sorry to interrupt maybe at an awkward time there, is that they used the meme of all the three Spider-Mans looking at each other. And they said every trial, the defendant has said that they got it right except for them. You know, they essentially got it right except for them. And that you got the right, because you can't say they got the wrong murderers because they're on film doing it. But they all said that they were out of the loop. So Charlie was extorted. Luis Rivera, I think Sigfredo's was Luis Rivera, was the kingpin to the Adelson family instead of Sigfredo and Katie. It's odd.
For relief, the remedy Markel was seeking was to have the court order this defendant to have no contact with those boys unless she was supervised, because he didn't want her disparaging him to the boys, and because it was a violation of the right of first refusal, in his opinion, for Wendy to leave the boys all the time with her mom and not give him a chance to have them if Wendy wasn't going to keep them. How do you think Donna took this information? She refers to those kids as hers. She was the one sacrificing her time at the office to be up here in Tallahassee doing for those boys. She had invested so much of her own time in this fight against Dan Markel to try to get a win for the family. And after all that investment in those kids and all the money spent on the attorneys and all that time spent at the kitchen table working on those divorce filings, Donna Adelson was losing. The boys and Wendy were stuck in Tallahassee. Wendy wasn't working at the law firm in South Florida, raking in a bunch of money and dating some new guy that she pre-screened for her. And Grandma's Sunshines weren't in South Florida. That's where they belonged. That's what was best for them. They had lost in court. Wendy wouldn't comply with Donna's plan of action. And Dan Markel apparently wouldn't take a bribe or be strong-armed to allow his kids to come to South Florida. But as it turns out, Gibber still had not beaten the Adelson family because there was still another option, the option of hiring the hitman. Charlie joked about hiring a hitman, but he had also been actively pursuing that option at least since Halloween of 20.
Donna not taking the stand really wanted your money back. Me too. And Charlie. It's like we had like two for true crime people. It's very serious business, and I understand there's a death, but I was really looking forward to Charlie Adelson's testimony and cross, especially the cross, and Donna's testimony. And it looked like with all her testifying at these hearings that she was going to, it looked like everything was a go until I think it was the prison snitches that did it. Once you have a script, it's really hard to say, hey, I'm going to testify to what the jury's already seen as a script. And I think also when you see Georgia Cappleman in action on these crosses, I also think she got cold feet. It's a great imagining that you can do great against someone like Georgia when you're lying. I mean, but watching it in action, not that Donna is so narcissistic. I'm sure she thinks Georgia's terrible and manipulative and everything that she talked about with Charlie Adelson, folksy. And I noticed Georgia Cappleman was less folksy. That was one of the things that they criticized Georgia Cappleman for in her closing. Charlie and Donna did was being folksy and saying y'all. She talks about Occam's razor and use your common sense in Charlie Adelson's closing. Not so here. This is just a complete rundown of the case and the theory of the case and how the evidence supports the case. And I love her sarcasm at times. She says, when they brought in lawyers to say this isn't bad, of course they're going to testify for money, these divorce lawyers. It's so much money being an expert witness. It's such easy work and so nice work if you can get it. They get paid a lot, a lot of money for just getting up on the stand and saying, this isn't the worst I've ever seen. And Donna, Wendy Adelson's lawyer, I had an aversion to, a real aversion to. She wouldn't have been my divorce lawyer. Not that I plan on getting a divorce, but not even married. But anyway, I wouldn't pick her as my divorce lawyer.
Over the last several months, Charlie had several conversations with Catherine McBanoa about this job, which started as a request to harm and then eventually revealed itself as a murder for hire. Recall that McBanoa said that often when she and Charlie would discuss the murder and the pressing need to get it done, he would emphasize to her that the toll that Wendy's situation was taking on his parents emotionally and physically as they were stressed to the point of being physically ill. So he would often tell her that's the motive.
That's the motive. Well, Charlie also wanted his parents' love and approval. I mean, he's still a child. When you listen to Robert Adelson say, what is Charlie into? He's into go-karts. He's into, these are child things. There's an immaturity problem with, and I'm not talking about Robert, in the Adelson family, period. And in an unwillingness and a stubbornness about growing up. And they're all like children inside emotionally. I get tantrums, total lack of empathy for anyone else, narcissism. All children are very narcissistic. The world revolves around you when you're a child. Your needs. So, yeah. Have you guys all seen the video of Charlie Adelson being transported and eating food, eating geese? They give him Wendy's. Very nice of them. Transporting him on the long trip. He gets Wendy's, some fast food before they bring him to the jail. driver. He's eating his food like a pig in the back, and with his legs like spread, couldn't be any wider. And apparently when he was very nice to the driver, like, my man, talking him up, like really happy that he was getting his fast food, because it must be such a treat after so much prison food. But when he got into Leon County, he was screaming and swearing at the staff in there. Who's it? True Lifestyles has some videos on that. I mean, they're just small encounters that he gets his toe stubbed. It's hard to tell. It wasn't red, but it's hard to tell if it was really injured or if he was just trying to get to medical. And then they said he's on medication, and I wonder for what? What do they have him on medication for? What, antidepressants, you think? I don't know. What is your guess?
That's why we need to get this done. It's like stressing out my mom. On May 16th, 2014, 2 months before the murder, Wendy was added as a resident to that condo in South Florida. On May 30th, 2014, Donna sends Charlie the text, quote, "Horrible morning with Danny. Tough conversation with her." This text was sent less than 2 months before the murder. The drama is continuing. Everyone's still fighting. It's contentious. Prior to the June trip, Charlie had prepared an envelope containing the murder instructions. He told Catherine Magbanua that he used gloves when handling the paperwork inside, that he printed it not on any printer that can be connected to him, and that she was not to touch the contents of what was inside. She was to deliver the envelope to Sigfredo Garcia. She followed these instructions. In early June, she came back to Charlie asking for travel expenses for the hitmen. She got a couple $100 to give them to rent a car to come up here.
So this is really insightful. Aristotle, justice for Dan Markel, I think that's what that means. Forgive me if it's initials or something else. Says, really insightful point. The stunted emotional development to me was at age when children expressed opinions and Donna shut them down. It was traumatic for sure. Wow, I bet you're right. But I just can't get over the driving thing. But, I moved myself into the first day of college. My parents were really into us being independent and not spoiled. I don't know. So I maybe have a different view, but they'd be like, so forget it. Forget it. You want me to fly up there and drive with you multiple times? No way. My father's alibi. Thank you so much for gifting 5 memberships. If you haven't checked out Allison's channel, she's at My Father's Alibi. She's doing a lot of live streams herself lately. And I hope you'll come on. I gotta write. I'll try to send you an email, Allison. Let's work on doing something. Maybe just maybe you can come on in the beginning of an episode or something. If you want, I don't know. I'd love to have you on. All right, back to Georgia.
They came. Well, let's back up just a little bit. They rented the car June 2nd, 2014. Magbanua drops Garcia off at the rental car place, and then Magbanua calls Charlie on the way home from the rental car place. And you saw the evidence of this in Sergeant Corbett's presentation. Charlie immediately calls Donna on the landline after hanging up with Magbanua. How do we know that he talked to his mother and not his dad, since it was the landline? Well, because a few minutes after that call, he talks to dad on his cell. So probably didn't talk to dad on the landline, and then a few minutes later talked to him on the cell. Garcia and Rivera traveled to Tallahassee. This is June 4th, 2014. Rivera notes that Garcia is in possession of a piece of paper. The paper has a photo on it and some information. This information allowed them to locate and follow Dan Markel's vehicle, a black Honda Accord with the tag number 534YBM. Information that the defendant had written in her 2014 planner. Wendy and Jeff Lacoste have their coffee date, at which she cancels their planned trip to California on July 11th through the 17th. She offers no real explanation for why she's canceling, except to say that she's real worried about being able to pick up the boys on the 18th. The 18th, of course, ends up being the day that Dan Markel is killed. Later that night, Jeff Lacoste goes to Wendy's, and she's a nervous wreck. She won't tell him what's wrong, but her stomach's upset, and he goes and gets her Pepto-Bismol.
So for those listening on podcast, we see a little page of Donna Adelson's journal over, I thought this was so effective, over a picture of Dan Markel's car in the garage after being murdered in it. Essentially, his Honda Accord, 08 Accord. It may be 07, it may 08. 07 Odyssey. What is that? Is that the car he had before that? Do you know? And there's his, with his license plate number. Her 3s look like 8s, don't they? Loving Anna. When they brought out the handwriting, forensic handwriting person, I wanted them to bring out someone in the art of handwriting analysis for personality. I know Brown University, they used to make you handwrite your college essay, because I guess they must believe in that a little bit. I don't know what the purpose of it is otherwise.
Well, the killers are in town when that happens. The hitmen spend a day and a half following Dan Markel around Tallahassee. Here they are near the park there by his residence. They scope out his residence, and although Rivera had already purchased the murder weapon, a revolver that he got on the streets for the express purpose of killing Dan Markel, they lost him, or he was with the kids, or for whatever reason they did not get the job completed on the June trip. After the hitmen failed to get the job done, Charlie tells Donna on June 7th of 2014 that he's still working on Dad's birthday present. And she says, I know you'll come through. Sometime around June 11th, Jeff Lacoste went over to Wendy's residence and observed her living room TV to have.
Still working on Dad's birthday present. And that's another thing that was chilling about Robert Adelson's testimonies. He testified that his dad never wanted gifts. There was a big gift they'd all, probably for someone else, not for his dad. I mean, to call a murder a gift is pretty, makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, no? Doe-eyed Blonde says Roberta look up the issues he had while in Leon County. I was just talking about that. Swearing at the staff, saying his toe got hit by the door when they came in to give him his meds. He's losing it, but alive, unlike Dan. In the stop at Wendy's, yeah, everyone's remarking that it's ironic, but I'm sure that that was just what was nearby to the jail. That's what I'm thinking. I don't think there's any great, just one of those little ironies, certainly. Sure, the driver was not thinking about Wendy Adelson when he stopped.
Some impact damage. This was the same TV that Charlie got Wendy as a divorce present because it was cheaper than hiring a hitman. The location and damage to the set did not appear consistent with something the kids could have caused, at least to Jeff. Note that this is over a month before the murder that Jeff observes this damage. So it was hung out there for a while. June 13th, the defendant has a note in her calendar to consider canceling Harvey's birthday party if that's what he wants to do. Now, this is between the June and July trips that there's a note to herself to talk to Harvey about whether or not he wants to cancel the party. Rob Adelson testified that there was no illness or anything going on in the family that he knew of that would potentially result in the canceling of Dad's party. This note may be contemplating that if the murder had happened on the June trip, that Harvey might decide it's not appropriate to go through with the party and we need to cancel these invitations. Wendy took a photo with Catherine Magbanua on the beach 2 days after that note to self in the planner. Here she is in front of the South Beach condo, pictured with Catherine Magbanua. That photo was taken June 15th of 2014.
I love when Wendy talks about meeting Catherine Magbanua at the beach. She always says, I was only there for an hour. Like, only there for an hour. Like, you really remember exactly how long you were there for and for what reason. And the other thing I didn't realize from this closing, although I don't know why I'm saying it like it's connected to what I just said, but just speaking of this closing argument, is that I didn't realize that Wendy had deleted Charlie Adelson's message, the one she said she replied to by saying, oh, that's so sweet, at the police station. Wow, they didn't get that phone quick enough, huh? I didn't realize that's when she deleted it. I assumed she deleted it when she got it. Exactly.
Wendy sends Rob a text with a picture of her and Jeff Lacasse. This is June 28th of 2014. She includes a request to her brother Rob not to tell her parents about her relationship with Jeff. This suggestion of a secret boyfriend later prompted Rob to suggest Jeff as a potential suspect to the FBI, a secret boyfriend. This was also a little odd that she sent this because Wendy never talked to Rob about her boyfriends, and also because Jeff had already met her parents several times. June 30th of 2014, the defendant comes and gets Wendy and the boys from Tallahassee to take them down to Miami. Remember how she doesn't let Wendy drive with the boys to Miami. She rents a car and comes here and picks them up and drives them to Miami herself. And I think Harvey comes with her. Wendy was to be in South Florida for 2 weeks. In the time between the June and the July trip, Charlie begins to put more pressure on Catherine Magbanua to get the murder done. On several occasions when he and Magbanua were discussing the murder, Charlie would step out of the room to call his mother and then return and advise her that the murder needed to get done as soon as possible because his parents were so stressed and worried about Wendy's situation. Charlie painted Dan Markel as an awful person to Catherine Magbanua. He was making Wendy's life hell. He was stressing out her parents. Katie knew somebody who could get this thing done, and he wanted it done. Magbanua understood that the murder was needed urgently to relieve the stress on Charlie's mother. July 1st, 2014, we have a single call from Garcia to Harvey Adelson. This call did not connect. Appears like it went to voicemail. And we would later learn from Magbanua that this was after an incident in which her two love interests, Charlie Adelson and Sigfredo Garcia, had a little bit of a run-in. Garcia was angry and jealous about Magbanua dating Charlie and tried to confront Charlie. After this attempted confrontation, it's believed that Garcia was trying to call Charlie, but ended up getting Harvey. And that was that one hang-up call, but it ended up being important because it showed up on the tower dump, Garcia's number, and then when we cross-referenced it with all the Adelson numbers, that was the first match that gave us Sigfredo Garcia's name. We would later learn that the real connection between the Adelsons and the killers was Catherine Magbanua and her relationship with Charlie Adelson. The text messages found in Charlie's iCloud corroborate what Magbanua says about the interactions and the call made the day before. So here she's saying,
So it looks like Georgia Cappleman, the way she does closings is she's such a good orator that she can just speak. It's not written word for word like a lot of closings. It looks like she has a list of things, and as she goes down them, she just crosses it off. That's what it seems like. If I'm wrong and she's written every word down, forgive me, but doesn't it seem like that? Listen to you can hear her crossing things off as she goes through them.
basically Garcia's being ridiculous and childish. Harvey's birthday Evite goes out on July 3rd of 2014. The Evite addresses the boys by the last name Adelson. Their name was Markel. This is 2 weeks before the murder of Dan Markel. Even though the Evite says hosted by Donna and the party was for Harvey, the defense has suggested that it was Harvey and not Donna that sent the Evites. The evidence showed otherwise, and Corbett told you there was some follow-up from Donna with the Evite people. She sent that email. A text is sent from Wendy's phone to Dan Markel on July 6th of 2014. At the time this text was sent, the phone was present at the South Beach condo where the defendant lived. Dan Markel confirms, yes, I'm going to be in town to get murdered. Not specifically, but he's asked, are you going to be in town July 14th or the 18th? Those are the dates the killers were here. And this, despite the fact that the schedule for that week had already been decided way before this text. And Wendy was already scheduled to have the boys on that Wednesday, which is what she's asking about. She doesn't ask about the whole week that he's got the kids. She only asks about the 14th through the 18th. And I think the killers ended up going to Tallahassee on the 15th through the 18th. Obviously, Dan Markel was killed on the 18th.
Another chilling detail that some of this against Wendy there, that she's asking Dan Markel about his schedule. A lot of this closing felt like a gear up to a prosecution of Wendy Adelson. There's one time when she says, well, in this, Georgia tells the jury, well, Wendy Adelson isn't a defendant in this case, something like that. And you want to scream, why not? Why not? I'm sure everyone on the jury is going, why? And this was all done for her. I think she goes on to say something like that too. And the jury had to be scratching their heads and wondering, why not? Why is the woman who drove up to the crime scene right up to the edge of the tape and is asking Dan Markel just about this 1 week, and it wasn't customary to ask, and no other, the murder week, no other, why is she still walking around? Odd, right? Proper noun. Sorry to get to this late. Love your channel, Roberta. Thank you so much. I can't wait to hear you imitate Donna's reaction to the verdict. Her reaction to the verdict was like, I think I may talk about it more in another episode, but just what she said was, oh my God, oh my God. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. Oh my God. Oh my God. And then he tells her to calm down, and she still can't calm down, but she insists on sitting there. Just leave if you can't control yourself, lady. But no tears. Pretty telling. She had to act out. And I have a theory as to why. But once they get into Donna Adelson's behavior and how she really created a lot of evidence against herself in her own adoptive admissions, that's when her legal team jumps and it's like, no way. They do something that's really unprecedented in I mean, not unprecedented. It's happened before, but not common. That's a better word. Not common for closing arguments. It's considered really rude to object during closing argument. And there is Jackie Fulford objecting. They have to clear the jury. And she makes her argument and loses for nothing. And then they come back and Georgia Cappleman continues on talking about how Donna Adelson showed she was guilty in her own behavior and her own actions. I mean, it's hard to ignore. That's why they were like, shut this thing down. Not only is it incredibly compelling evidence all put together, it tells a consistent story from beginning to end. And that's something that you look for when you're, you won't get answers to everything in a true crime case. There are some things you just cannot know. But it tells the evidence tells a complete story. And innocence fraud narratives and crappy defenses don't. They can tailor their story to some of the evidence, but not all of the evidence. Whereas the prosecution's case, because it's true, it all fits together in a logical, rational, reasonable way. There are some things that you can't know. There is going to be some anomalies sometimes in the evidence. I was just hearing in Koberger's case, they didn't find his DNA under her fingernails. Well, I thought he wore gloves, so I wouldn't think so. But even if, you sometimes won't find DNA where you think. Sometimes you'll find DNA, a lot of times you'll find DNA totally not related to the crime. And defense attorneys will try to make that relevant. DNA is some of the most easily manipulated evidence because it's so convincing, because especially when it's, singular DNA connected to one person, you think, well, could it possibly be anyone else? Or, we call it a match, but a statistical match, like 1 in an 8 billion chance. But is it related? Is there a reason? Is it related? Or is it manipulated?
July 11th, 2014. The defendant comes back to Tallahassee to bring Wendy and the boys home. Okay, so bringing her home from the Harvey birthday party. That same day, both Harvey Adelson and the defendant separately, 8 minutes apart, email Wendy Adelson about her TV repair appointment that's going to happen on the day of the murder. July 13th, Wendy and Lacoste meet at Wendy's house, and she's an emotional wreck again for no apparent reason. Lacoste impeached her regarding some statements that she made during a discussion of their relationship that evening in the context of, you got to get past this moving to Miami thing. I mean, you're not going to be able to move to Miami. And she says, yeah, it's not an issue unless something happens to Dan. And she says, can I tell you something in confidence? And she makes the chilling statement at that time that her brother, besides joking about hiring a hitman because it was buying a TV because it was cheaper than hiring a hitman, he also, in fact, had looked into hiring a hitman to kill Dan Markel. This conversation occurred just 5 days before the murder. July 15th, the Prius is rented. July 16th, Rivera and Garcia traveled to Tallahassee. July 17th, Rivera and Garcia followed Dan Markel around Tallahassee. July 18th, murder day. You guys okay? Anybody need a break? Okay. July 18th, 8:11 a.m., the defendant texts Wendy about the TV repair appointment. The TV repair appointment was planned for between 8 a.m. and noon that day. And she says, they are on their way over now to help you with the TV sets in your living room. In case she didn't know which TV set it was. This is the TV that Charlie bought as a divorce present because it's cheaper than hiring a hitman. Could it be a coincidence that this TV is also the alibi for Wendy on the day of?
So if you're listening on podcast, as Georgia Cappleman is describing the TV alibi, Donna Adelson shakes her head. You want to see that again? Everybody's watching with me live. I think we should see this. She's been admonished how many times in court told not to do this? Because it's really all she has. She doesn't have a very good defense. She's not going to testify. So she's going to testify from her seat by making faces at the jury, telling them, it's not true. And just diminishing and demeaning the evidence with her face. Didn't work. But let's take a look at it here, especially around the TV. And we know from the jailhouse calls between Donna and Charlie that they think everything that happened to them is just coincidence, and that Georgia has it wrong, and that TV wasn't a code for anything. That just Donna randomly said the TV is about 5. TVs back in 2014, although Charlie Adelson told his friend, his very gullible sounding friend, I don't know if he is or not. I don't know if he was playing into Charlie, who called him after his conviction. It was like, whoa, man, really? Oh, man. He's like, well, that's what TVs were back then. $5,000. No TV was $5,000. And certainly not Wendy Adelson's. That's dorm room TV.
The TV repair appointment was planned for between 8 a.m. and noon that day. And she says they are on their way over now to help you with the TV sets in your living room. In case she didn't know which TV set it was. This is the TV that Charlie bought as a divorce.
Right. Not the one in front of Dan Markel's house. They're on their way too. The killers are on their way too, Wendy. But the Geek Squad is coming to fix the TV in your living room. Your living room, Wendy. I love how the defense said it couldn't have been an alibi because they could have come earlier or a little bit later, between 8 and 12. I mean, what? She's still waiting for, even if they hadn't come yet, she's still there waiting for them. Still an alibi.
Divorce present because it's cheaper than hiring a hitman. Could it be a coincidence that this TV is also the alibi for Wendy on the day of the murder? While he's being murdered by a hitman. And then, as we know, the defendant later uses TV as code when she's speaking on those wiretap calls. 8:20 a.m., Wendy texts Charlie, "This is so sweet." We don't know what it means, but she's texted him that, and then she deleted it sometime between the time it was sent, 8:20 a.m., and the time that her phone was celebrated or downloaded at the police station later that day.
Oh.
9:04 a.m.
Oh, I misunderstood. I thought they said she did it at the police station. Oh, she's saying sometime between then. Okay. All I heard was police station. Okay. Correction. I'm wrong.
Dan Markel leaves a voicemail for Wendy telling her he's headed to the gym and wants to know if it's okay for him to pick up the boys early and take them swimming that afternoon. Wendy says no, he cannot take the boys swimming.
Hurley D, thank you. I heard that. I haven't listened. The jury foreperson is on TikTok. I haven't listened to the jury foreperson yet. Do you know where to find it on TikTok? Do you know his or her name? Is it a man or a woman? I think it's a man, right? Thanks for the super chat. I'll check it out. But I would think the first vote would be very few people voting not guilty, even on first vote in the jury room.
After school that day. Meanwhile, what's going on across town? The Prius is following Dan Markel into the gym parking lot. There it is at 9:16 a.m. 9:19 a.m. to 9:37 a.m., Charlie and Wendy talk for 18 minutes. Wendy and Dan argue back and forth a bit about him wanting to take the boys swimming, but after getting off the phone with Charlie, Wendy concedes the argument with Dan and says, okay, you can pick them up and bring them back to me when you're done swimming. But of course, the swimming plan didn't happen because Dan Markel was killed. 10:38 a.m., the Prius follows Mr. Markel out of the gym parking lot. 10:45 a.m., Mr. Markel is shot twice in the head, in his vehicle, in his garage. 10:51, the Prius is captured, fleeing the scene on a city bus camera. 11:01, Mr. Geiger calls 911. 11:15, law enforcement arrives at the scene and sets up a perimeter. Dan Markel is rushed to the hospital. He's treated, but the damage is catastrophic. It's not survivable. And he passes away about 14 hours later. 12:30, the hitmen, now headed back south, turn their phones on. They had turned them off for the homicide. They turn them back on. The first phone call that either one of them makes is Sigfredo Garcia to Catherine Magbanowa. They want their money. Where is Magbanowa getting the money? From Charlie. 12:45. So while the killers are calling Magbanowa and heading south, Wendy goes out of her way to visit the crime scene, encounters a roadblock and crime scene tape. Per the officer at the roadblock, she would have been able to clearly see the police activity at her former residence. The residence where her children currently lived half the time and where they woke up that morning. Yet she abruptly turns around and leaves. She does not make contact with the officer to ask what's going on. She does not call the police to inquire. She does not call Dan Markel to say, are you okay? There's a bunch of cops at the house. She does not call the daycare to make sure her children arrive that morning and are okay. Instead, she proceeds to the ABC Liquors, purchases her Bullet Bourbon at 12:49. She's later approached by law enforcement at lunch and gives a law enforcement interview in which she says, my parents have more reason to dislike Danny than almost anyone else. This echoes Rob Adelson's testimony that his mother hated Dan Markel at the time of his murder. And even from the periphery, it was known to Ryan Fitzpatrick as Charlie's friend that his mother did not like Dan Markel. In her law enforcement interview, Wendy suggests her mother is someone who is very angry at Dan Markel. She suggests Charlie when asked if someone might do this on her behalf. She calls her mom, and the defense has put that call into evidence. 7:04 p.m., she tells her mom that there's been a shooting, and afterwards, Wendy expresses relief that they sounded surprised. 8:59, defendant arrives at Charlie's with the murder money. How do we know she went there and that they aren't just old people that drive really slow? Well, there's a text message outside your house. I guess we're going to find out what that means, but I guess it's not going to be outside your house. And he says 10 men. Guess we're going to find out what that means, but apparently it doesn't mean I'll be there in 10 minutes and meet you there and get the money. About 10 o'clock, Catherine Magbanowa joins Charlie at the house.
That's what I mean about Georgia Cappleman's sarcasm. So they were saying, the defense was saying that I'll meet you 10 minutes doesn't mean I'll meet you in 10 minutes, and that They were insinuating that they drove so slowly. You know, old people drive, that you couldn't trust that they were actually there. That they really tried to poke holes in that, in what was an A+ investigation. It's really hard to fault the investigation at all.
Here they are making plans for that meeting. Next slide, please. Charlie answers the door with a gun in his hand. He's extremely amped up. He tells Magbanua, my parents just left. They both end up taking Xanax and sleeping over there for the night. The next morning, July 19th, 2014. So this is early morning hours, 1:25 a.m. I think we need the next slide. Yeah, 1:25 a.m. Donna and Harvey arrive at their Orlando hotel. In the morning, Charlie puts the money in Catherine Magbanua's trunk. She's seen at 9:33 a.m. approximately, heading south toward Rivera's house, where she's going to meet up ultimately with Rivera and Garcia and give them the money. Garcia takes the money out of the trunk where Charlie Adelson put it and divides it up between the three of them. Magbanua says she did not count her cut, but we know she put some of it in the bank, creating the largest monthly cash spike of any of the records we examined for her bank. This cash spike also occurs at a time when Magbanua was not employed. Rivera says his understanding was the job paid $100,000 total to be split between the three, and that the cut that he received was roughly a third of that at $35,000. We don't know the amount of Garcia's cut, but we know he got at least enough to buy a car and a motorcycle. All right, so July 20th, the defendant and Harvey Adelson take Wendy and the boys back to South Florida. 2 days after, not even 48 hours after Dan Markell is shot. They're gone. Relocation granted. On the way, Wendy receives a call from Detective Isom. She tells him that the call's breaking up, and she hangs up, afterwards referring him to her lawyer. Catherine Magbanua that day, or thereabouts, opens her Ziploc bag of money and finds her cut to be $100 bills stapled together in $1,000 stacks. How we know Charlie keeps his money. She also notes that her cut is damp and moldy. She mentions this to Charlie, and he tells her that his mother washed the money. Not like laundered, like washed. Rob Adelson gets a call from Donna Adelson advising him not to talk to the FBI. What? Rob Adelson gets a call from this defendant advising him not to talk to the FBI, just in case they call. He says, well, I already did. She says, well, you don't know anything anyway, and hangs up. July.
That was some of the most jaw-dropping testimony of the trial. I don't know if everybody got it when he said it. I did. Not a problem. You're a problem if you do know something. That's why we're not talking. We all know something. You're not harmful because you don't know anything. You don't know what we know. Whoa. And according to, how would they know this otherwise? According to Jarena Bernhardt and Patricia Bird, I can't remember which one of them testified this. I think it was Patricia Bird. No, it was Bernhardt. I don't know. Bernhardt, I think, said that she was very worried about, Donna Adelson was very worried about her son, Robert, the oldest and estranged son's testimony. Which is fascinating to me. It's what I've been thinking about for the last couple of days. Why was she so worried? She really didn't say anything all that much. But it's her behavior that's so telling. It's not being curious. And as soon as Georgia starts talking about this is when we get her adoptive admissions. We can go over adoptive admissions again if we want. if you want, what is an adoptive admission, that's when the defense gets up and objects and throws out the whole jury. But she knew that she didn't say much, but her behavior was telling, and what she did say was very telling. Well, you don't know anything anyway. And when the killer's caught, got to get off the phone. She knew she had said too much anyway. She got off the phone, she was kicking herself, I'm sure. Is Robert going to talk? She must have been trying to keep him sweet for a while, for those next couple of years, because she knew it would be damaging if he talked. You don't know anything anyway. This is why murderers tend to leak out information, guilty murderers, because you can't control every little thing that you say. You know, you pick words very quickly, and the words that you pick are very telling. Tell on yourself. You can't help it. That's why lawyers want you to say nothing.
July 24th, 2014, Dan Markel was laid to rest in Canada. His children were not in attendance. August of 2014, the defendant registers the older child for flag football under the last name Adelson. His name is Markel. This is 1 month after their father was killed, and already he's being erased from their lives. Within 1 year, their names would be legally changed to Adelson. Nine 12/14. The defendant refers to the younger child by the last name Adelson. 9/17/14. The first check is written to Catherine Magbanua, signed by this defendant. This is the murder money. Even though Charlie has signing authority on this account, he could write these checks.
Did everybody see the micro shake of the head there? So now she's going to just do it a little bit. Check it out.
Magbanua, signed by this defendant. This is the murder money. Even though Charlie...
I'm sorry, it's the heavy sighing and the micro shake of the head.
Charlie has signing authority on this account. He could write these checks. He chooses to connect his elderly mother to a murder payment. If she wasn't involved, there is no reason in the world why she would write these checks. The defense said in opening that Charlie told Donna to write the checks because it was his business. But half of these checks were written after the business was sold back to Harvey on October 2nd, 2015. Regardless of who owned the business.
Rule, members of the jury, you are relying on your memory of the evidence in this case. You may proceed.
Thank you, Judge. And regardless of who owned the business at the time, all the Adelsons had an interest in the Adelson Institute. All three of them had signing authority on that checkbook. But the defendant is the one that wrote that check. September 17, 2014, and the 43 checks that followed. Is that consistent with what we've heard? That she would just write the checks and not ask any questions? We've heard that she is assertive. She's controlling. She's a details person. She ran that business and those people's lives. She ran a tight ship. We've seen her weekly planners where she plans out every detail of her own life, making meticulous notes. She kept detailed information about Dan Markel and lots of other things. Rob Adelson testified that she's not the type of person who's just going to do something someone tells her to do. She's going to be asking questions. And we heard that Charlie testified that he told his mother about extortion. He says he was being extorted, right? All right, let's fast forward to October of 2015. Charlie's had a couple girlfriends since the murder and is now dating June Mchinda. Remember her? June, one of Charlie's girlfriends that testified, she said they were enjoying a fairy tale relationship in October of 15. During her relationship with Charlie, June observes that Charlie packages his money in an unusual way. $100 bills stapled into $1,000 stacks. June also observes the defendant to be in control of the family and super involved with the grandchildren. However, she found it odd that nobody in the family seemed curious about who killed Dan Markell, nor did they seem upset about the murder. Rob Adelson also noted a complete lack of curiosity on the part of his mother about this murder in the family. When he asked what the defendant thought happened to Danny, she said, quote, "I don't know and I don't care. It doesn't concern me." As someone who liked details and who always stayed on top of everything, her total lack of interest in who killed her former son-in-law, her grandchildren's father, is totally out of character. From July of 14 to April of 16, Donna Adelson got everything she wanted. Wendy and the kids were in South Florida where she could drop them off and pick them up, manage their schoolwork, their tennis, their piano lessons, and have her sunshines with her every day. All the while, she's steady paying for the murder of their father. Everyone is living their best life, thinking they've gotten away with murder until the bump. Everything changed on April 19, 2016, when the bump occurred. The undercover approaches Donna and hands her a piece of paper. The most human reaction in the world is to look at the paper. Uh-oh.
Look at how well Georgia handles this. So it's just known that when you're in trial, your trial presentations and technology is always going to hit the fritz. And Georgia just handles it so well. She's so comfortable. I mean, this is her case. She's on the 4th trial. And she's just hitting her stride with this closing. I like this closing better than Charlie Adelson's closing. I listened to it a bunch of times. And someone just said it's so thorough. I agree. Who's just said that? The audience. Someone just said, this is the most thorough closing. I agree. But it is thorough. She's a great lawyer. I love Georgia Cappleman, as you know. Yeah, Diva. Just mentioned it. You are right, Diva. Time Dance Company. You are right on for the right on. It is very thorough. And here the defense is going to come in any minute and try to disrupt it.
Defense, I think we got one more. There we go. The defense told you in opening that this defendant is a normal person just like you and me. There is nothing normal about the way she conducts herself in the minutes, hours, and days after the undercover approaches her with that paper. The bump and the wire were designed to expose the co-conspirators and their roles in this conspiracy, and it did. Here, we're just 10 minutes later. There's only one thing a normal person would do if approached on the street by a stranger who appears to be threatening harm to them in some way. A normal, or maybe I should say an innocent person would, 1, look at the paper. She didn't do that. 2, get to safety. Get help, contact law enforcement or your husband or somebody that's going to come help you. Get somewhere safe. What you would not do is lead the bad guy right to the grandchildren. The last thing a normal, innocent person would do is go get her little grandchildren and walk right back down the same block with them where this stranger just approached her. But that is exactly what she does. Then she gets on the phone with Charlie and says absolutely nothing about Dan Markell. His picture's on the paper. What she does say on the wire, which by the way is direct evidence. I know y'all like that. Some direct evidence. When Charlie asked Donna on State's 99 call A,
What's that?
does it?
What a terrible time to not hear. What? Charlie Adelson. What? Probably the two of us. Well, actually, I'll do it. I'll do a correct one. Probably the two of us. What? What? What, Mom? Charlie. Probably the two of us. The murder that we just committed. The two of us. Yeah, the two of us. I mean, you can't even open up a defense that maybe like a Phil Spector type defense. They misheard. The fountain was so loud or the connection was so bad. You can't even count on this transcript. He has to clarify. I mean, it's there. Direct evidence.
Involve me or other people? Well, probably both of us. That is direct evidence. If anyone in that jury room wants to acquit her, make them tell you how that is not a confession. In call B, Charlie calls back because he can't stand it. And he asks his mother, will you send me a picture of the bump flyer?
All right, let me do this. Do you want to take a picture of the letter and send me a second?
No, I don't want to do that. Well, why not? Why not? Normal, nice little old lady who knows nothing about this murder and has nothing to do with it. If Charlie's the one making you write the checks and Charlie's the one that knows something about it, send him a picture of it. He's asking for it. She doesn't want to do that. Why not? Call C, Charlie calls back to say,
Carolina, thanks so much for becoming a YouTube member. Appreciate it.
don't talk about things in the apartment. Oh, obviously. Obviously, we can't talk about things in the apartment. What's obvious? Is it obvious to you?
What is the kind of that's what they ask for?
This TV was probably about 5. She's the original code talker. This TV, and look what he says. They asked you for $5,000. He decodes it. He's not the one talking in code. He's decoding it and saying what he's picking up what she's putting down. There's no TV mentioned by the undercover operative that approached Donna Adelson on the street. A couple big takeaways for you, please. Innocent people do not talk in code. Second big takeaway, TV is code for the murder throughout this case. You got Charlie's joke, Wendy's chilling statement to Jeff Lacasse, the alibi of the TV, and now here we've got this TV again. A TV, A TV that's the alibi for Wendy. It sat broken for over a month so that a repairman could come out to be her alibi on the morning of the murder. An appointment that her parents set up for her, which was pointless because the TV was smashed and, of course, could not be repaired. Then she claimed she had an 18-minute phone call with Charlie about the fact that a smashed TV can't be fixed before she got in her car and went to the crime scene, where she did not get out of her car or make any phone calls or make any inquiries about what was going on at the house where her kids lived. Then Donna says that the undercover mentioned an ex-girlfriend.
Yeah.
Whereby, without knowing which ex-girlfriend, Charlie calls not his most recent ex-girlfriend, not the one before that. He only calls one, Catherine Magbanowa, because that's the only one he did a murder with. Because he probably did have a general idea what his mother was talking about. When Charlie brings up going to the police, his mother says, that's not a good idea. Why not? Then instead of notifying the police, Charlie and the defendant leave the safety of her very secure building and meet at a marina just 300 yards from where she was approached by the undercover. They were observed speaking very intensely to each other in low tones. After that meeting, Charlie goes to Dolce Vita. This is the restaurant where he meets up with Catherine Magbanowa, and we are able to capture some of that conversation that was had there. In that recording, we hear Charlie make statements that are not only incriminating, but that also are totally inconsistent with the defense that he would later offer at trial. Pause on the wiretap here for a moment just to go to what his defense was and what we've learned about that defense. I told you earlier that he said that Magbanowa, Garcia, and Rivera acted alone. They just came to Tallahassee and killed Dan Markel, kind of in the hopes that they would get paid. There are several pieces of evidence that Charlie had to explain, and he designed a defense that he thought would do that. First, he had to explain.
And now the real question is, did Donna write Charlie Adelson's defense? I mean, why wouldn't she? She meddled in every other area of their lives, mostly in Wendy's. But she couldn't handle the shame. I mean, her freedom was contingent on Charlie's freedom. So why wouldn't she? Especially knowing her relationship with Daniel Rashbaum, which was so close. She was calling him all the time. Why wouldn't she write that? And then we have the script from her jailmates that she wrote, which is oddly like Charlie Adelson's defense. And she's looking up the word extortion week before Charlie's trial. And then Charlie Adelson is absolutely certain on the stand. You cannot call, adamant that you can't call Katie Magbanowa a blackmailer. You have to call her an extortionist. Donna Adelson definitely had a hand. I mean, Charlie Adelson was smart not to pick up any of Donna Adelson's dumb script writing. You didn't see him on the stand going, and then Katie said, "This is so stupid. What a fool." Stuff like that. And she's the worst dialogue writer in the history of the world. She makes Ed Wood look good.
And that he's got this close connection between his girlfriend and the hitman. So the obvious defense there is, she heard me griping about Markel and she thought she was doing me a favor, so she did it on her own. Well, the problem with that is normally you're not going to have your extortionist spend the night with you. You're not going to have the woman that has murdered your former brother-in-law spend the night with you. You're not going to inquire about her plans to go to the pool the next morning if she's, just murdered your ex-brother-in-law. So to explain these messages, he testified that he did not believe she was a part of it. She wasn't one of the extortionists. I was extorted by the killers. I had nothing to do with it. No one in my family had anything to do with it. But I thought that my grandma was just a victim of the hitmen too. She was a go-between for them. She was protecting him from them. All the money he and his mom were paying her, cash and checks, were going to the hitmen, not for the benefit of Catherine Magbanua. Even the checks that were being deposited into her bank account, he said he believed she was taking out and giving the money to the killers. It was just funneling through her account so she could get insurance for her kids. So Charlie testified that he had previously mentioned to Magbanua the $1 million offer that his family was going to give Dan Markel, and from that she deduced, he's got a bunch of money. So she ran her mouth to her associates, and her associates took it upon themselves somehow to figure out who Dan Markel is and where he was and kill him on their own. Per Charlie, it was Katie alone that came to him on the night of the murder and demanded money on behalf of the hitmen, with the threat that if he didn't pay, they would kill him or other members of his family.
Thank you, JKC, for becoming a member. I appreciate it.
Since he didn't have that much money, Magbanua then negotiated a layaway plan with the hitmen for him to pay her monthly.
This is my favorite detail of Charlie Adelson's defense. The very reasonable layaway plan that the Latin Kings will give you. Always future oriented, always wise, very sensitive to the people they're trying to extort and their feelings and their needs and their financial situation, especially when they could have robbed Charlie Adelson clean of everything, his boat, his whatever, his go-karts, I don't know if he had go-karts then, but yeah, he did, right? Or no, that was 2 years later he bought a go-kart. I don't know if he had them before that. He was into them. His Ferrari, no interest, but a steady couple $1,000s a month. That's what they're going to go for. Over just robbing him blind, just getting all of it, everything he has for his life. I mean, it's his life. But they must have not thought Charlie Adelson's life was worth very much.
To go toward this amount of money that the hitmen were demanding. He agreed. He opened up his safe, not at gunpoint or anything, and gave her all the money that was in there. And because she needed to show proof of employment to get insurance, that's why that money was funneling through her account. It was all for the extortionist. The problem for Charlie with that was that he had already agreed to put Magbanua on the payroll between the two trips. You see here in June, he hadn't done it yet, but he says, no problem. Okay, so he'd already agreed to do it before she allegedly extorted him. Even though he had signing authority, it's this defendant that wrote those 44 checks. So if he's being extorted, why doesn't he write the checks? It's this extortion theory that we're saying that the defendant adopted when she heard Charlie's testimony and texted everyone she knew that what he just said on the witness stand was the truth. There's a concept in the law known as adoptive admissions. That's when one party makes a statement and the statement is adopted as the truth by another person.
Let's go through adoptive admissions because I have such a good explanation that's very short. from John Lewin, the king of the cold cases. He's a prosecutor who's won a ton of cold cases. This is his specialty. In Los Angeles, he prosecuted Robert Durst. I've done many episodes with him, on him, interviews with him. This is where he talks about Robert Durst's adoptive admission surrounding the movie, loosely based on Robert Durst's life, not even loosely, really based on his life and his murders, called All Good Things. And Robert Durst's reaction to All Good Things was he was angry that he was shown killing his dogs, when in fact, truth of the matter is he treated his dog, I think he's just killing his dog, Igor. He treated Igor very well, and he was upset by that. But this is why that's an adoptive admission and what it means. Here's a John Lewin talking about it. And please forgive me to everyone who heard me go over this a couple times in my life before, but I think it's helpful. Bob Durst was upset about his portrayal in All Good Things for one reason, about the dogs. Why was that important, and how was that helpful to you?
Well, what's very interesting about Bob Durst is that as much as he lies consistently about so many things, there are also things that he is very truthful about. And to some degree, that explains why he was successful in Galveston, in addition to other reasons we've discussed. But I think that jurors would look at things Bob would say and how, in some ways, honest he was about what a terrible person he was. And they would say, well, if he's admitting to X, but he's denying Y, maybe we can believe him. So here's what happened with the situation with Igor. When he saw it, he was genuinely and sincerely angry about it. And the reason he was angry about it was for one simple reason. It's not true. Bob did not kill any of his dogs. Bob loved his dogs. And so Bob's reaction to seeing it portrayed that he had killed Igor, it wasn't as if Andrew asked him, hey, Bob, is there something you don't like about what's going on? Is there something that really disturbed you about the movie? And then Bob said, well, I like this, but I didn't like this. Bob literally watched the scene, and without any prompting, he looks up and he goes, now, Andrew, that I do not like. And that's because his sincere reaction was, I didn't kill Igor. Why are you saying that? Now, what Bob doesn't think about, and what somebody who was more self-aware and just cared more, because Bob's very smart, Bob just doesn't care. But most people would say, gosh, I should probably object to the fact that I'm being portrayed as having personally or through somebody else murdered 3 people. So it's kind of like when somebody, accused you says, hey, listen, you murdered 7 children and you had sex with a donkey. And the person goes, I did not have sex with a donkey. Okay, probably good you clarified that. You probably also would have wanted to say, hey, I didn't do any of those things. So the reason Bob responded that way was because it was a true response to something he did not do. How did it hurt him? Well, it hurt him for the reasons I've just said, because everybody understands that if they were accused of crimes like this, portrayed as having murdered 3 people, they would be incredibly upset. They wouldn't be sitting down with the director saying, everything you said was pretty much true. So anyway, that's what I think happened.
Okay, that's John Lewin, the DA in Los Angeles, Deputy DA in Los Angeles. So pleased that he got his job back after the horrible George Gascon got voted out. Okay. He got demoted. A bunch of great prosecutors got demoted because they weren't defense friendly enough during George Gascon's pro-criminal reign. All right. So you're adopting. So back to adoptive admissions. You're adopting what the other person is saying is true. So by not denying it, you're adopting it as true. And this is when we're going to have some problems from the defense. And this gets into the really, like I said, this is the point of this episode. This is really some of the more damaging evidence against Donna. Donna did herself.
Charlie says in those first couple wire calls, if there's a threat, you go to the police. It's of interest that Donna doesn't say, what do you mean if there's a threat? We've been extorted for 2 years. There's been a threat for 2 years. Charlie did tell his best friend, Ryan Fitzpatrick, about the bump. So what I want to highlight here is the difference between their conduct during this like alleged extortion that was going on for 2 years versus the way they act after the bump, which we know was a ruse, but was supposed to be like a blackmail effort. So Charlie tells Ryan Fitzpatrick about the bump. He also tells him about the confrontation with Garcia in the roadway on July 1st, 2014, but he never previously confided in Ryan Fitzpatrick about, even though it's his best friend, about being extorted for 2 years by this girlfriend of his or her associates. Ryan also noted a major change in Charlie's demeanor around the time of the bump. He was displaying a level of stress and anxiety that was not present before the bump, evidencing that his story about being extorted the whole time is false. June Mchinda noticed these changes in Charlie's behavior as well, but she also noted a major change in this defendant's demeanor after the bump. Although she didn't know about the bump, around this time she observed the defendant to be a mess. She had a swollen face, was crying, and said she was on painkillers for stress. On the balcony of the Icon, which I'm not sure this is the right balcony, but some high rise, the defendant told June Mchinda she felt Danny was haunting her from the grave. Why would she make that statement unless she felt guilty about having wronged Dan Martell? So keeping that all in mind, let's see if the other evidence in the case makes sense with this Charlie version of events that this defendant has adopted.
Okay, so those are some of her adoptive admissions. Smitty Lee, thanks for becoming a YouTube member, supporting the channel. I appreciate it. Hi, Lily Benjamin. Nice to see you. Long time no see. Hope everything's okay in Mexico. I think that's where you are.
Starting with his statements to Catherine McBanoa at the Dolce Vita restaurant. Charlie says to Catherine McBanoa, if they had evidence, we'd have already gone to the airport. Even if they bug your phone, you're still not talking about any of this. Like his mother, Charlie emphasizes that the co-conspirators should not talk about what they know on the phone.
Who's that striking woman? Is that the gymnast sitting behind Harvey there? Does anyone know who she is? Is that she? Georgia Cappleman's okay. That is what a high rise. What property?
The cops would only bug your phone to get information about the murder, right? I mean, why are we not talking on the phone if we had nothing to do with it? Why are we not talking on the phone if we're being extorted and we're the victims here? Why are we not reporting it to the police if we're being extorted and we're the victims here? If the cops are listening, we're not reporting it to the cops because we're afraid they'll come kill us if we do that. Well, talk about it on the phone. If they're listening, they'll hear and they'll know you're being extorted, but they don't do that because it's bull. Discussion about how he's going to start arming himself. So Charlie says at Dolce Vita, I'm going to start, I don't remember his words exactly, but he's going to start carrying a gun and he's prepared to shoot. And he goes through a scenario where, he might have to kill somebody in his driveway and the cops will not ask any questions because he's a dentist. If he's been an extortion victim for 2 years, why is he just now starting to carry a gun? And then he says, if somebody comes up to me asking for money in my house, he's going to shoot them. This is the same guy that's been too paralyzed by fear
Her name escapes me too, Mo Freedom. That is the gymnast. I love the way she dresses. Kitties, thanks so much. Banana bread, my famous banana bread for everyone. Oh, for 5 people. Your banana bread, really. Kitties, 1993, thanks so much for gifting 5 memberships. I appreciate it. Thanks for supporting the channel. Enjoy the emojis. Banana bread among
over
them.
the last 2 years to report his victimization to the police or to anyone. This is a guy of considerable resources that could, I don't know, get some muscle or some help or some something. Not just roll over and open his safe and give all his money to some girl that's not even armed. This is a tough guy that would never tolerate somebody coming up to him at his house and asking for money. But he's talking to the woman who supposedly did that exact thing, came into his house and asked him for money. He doesn't mention, well, I gave you the money, but I'm not giving this guy any money. You know, it's like they don't mention this extortion. So you see the problem. But this defendant doesn't see the problem. She says that that's the truth. The truth is out, thank goodness. The truth is out after we remained silent for so long. The defense does not have to prove anything, but through cross-examination and the witnesses they called, they chose to kind of suggest, you know, maybe Charlie was involved, maybe Wendy was involved. But there's no connection to our client. But Charlie's story was that he and his mom were involved in the sense that they were extorted by Catherine McVanoa, so they knew who did the killing. They just didn't speak up because they were scared, because they were being extorted. Donna Adelson calls Charlie's story the truth when it suits her to support her son and proclaim his innocence during his trial, but now she kind of wants to distance herself from that because it's ridiculous story. It's not the truth. The truth wasn't out. Don't let her distance herself. She adopted that statement as the truth. She's stuck with it.
Please approach.
Okay, so there's right. What? Let's go back exactly what she was saying at the time. We got the. You can see Donna getting redder and redder as this goes on. She's getting angrier and angrier the more her behavior is put under the microscope. Here's Georgia Cappleman. Let's find out exactly what she was saying at the time. I mean, this whole section is all about adoptive admissions. If you're just tuning in, we're going over Georgia Cappleman's awesome closing argument in Donna Adelson's trial. She was convicted Thursday of the murder of FSU law professor Dan Markell. She will be doing a life sentence in prison, as same as her son, Charlie Adelson, same as the middle woman, Catherine McVanoa, and same as the shooter, Sigfredo Garcia. Luis Rivera, the getaway driver, made a deal with the state, and he should be out in five years. Is that it? Maybe less?
They just didn't speak up because they were scared, because they were being extorted. Donna Adelson calls Charlie's story the truth when it suits her to support her son and proclaim his innocence during his trial, but now she kind of wants to distance herself from that because it's ridiculous story. It's not the truth. The truth wasn't out. Don't let her distance herself. She adopted that statement as the truth. She's stuck with it.
Please approach.
So it's about Donna sticking with Charlie Adelson's defense.
Let's take you to the jury room.
Yeah, leave everything right there.
Which I believe she wrote. At least she had a hand in. Let me move this mic back a little further. She had a hand in writing, certainly. Had to. I mean, why is she looking up extortion a week before Charlie Adelson's trial? Why is Charlie Adelson so angry and defiant every time Georgia Cappleman uses the word blackmailer to describe Katie McBanawa? All right. Let's listen to the argument. This is Jackie Fulford. She was a judge. She got thrown off the bench. As she was being investigated, she voluntarily removed herself from the bench over issues, medical issues, essentially thrown off the bench. She's also been accused publicly by another lawyer in the area of faking cancer. I don't know if cancer was the medical issue that she brought up when she was being investigated for her unbecoming, basically fraudulent behavior.
Thank you, Judge. The comments being made in the closing argument.
I don't know if you could describe it. Let me just take that back as far as fraud. I would call it odd behavior. She let one woman pay back a restitution of something that was like in the realm of $15,000 is my memory of it. And she allowed her to pay restitution. So she's done something wrong. She's paying back the victim at $1 a month. So she would die before she could pay it all back. So she, for whatever reason, she allowed this convicted defendant to pay back restitution at $1 a month. And it's absurd and hostile towards the victim. She also insisted that everyone she worked for support this sheriff who she had a life-size cutout of in her office. So she was being investigated for conduct unbecoming at least. I don't know what you want to say about that $1 restitution. It definitely raised some eyebrows. Why a judge would be so lenient, ridiculously lenient towards a convicted criminal.
Of the state, and I don't like to interrupt closing, so I apologize for that. But there have been several comments that have been made that are burden shifting and commenting on my client's right to remain silent. She's stood before this jury and said that the defense has some other version. She said this in a text, but now they're saying something different. We don't have an obligation to answer any of this. She's insinuating to the jury that we're going to come up there and provide her version of events. She chose not to testify.
Cappleman, any argument concerning this?
So what I hear when I hear that is I hear Jackie Fulford freaking out, saying, how am I supposed to follow this defense? It's killing us. My client decided not to testify. I don't even have her word. Trust this 75-year-old grandmother sympathy vote. I mean, that's one thing Donna could have developed on the stand, is she could have developed a relationship with the jury, or they could have liked her and felt sorry for her, and essentially did jury nullification. One person, they could have at least gotten a hung jury and then maybe worked on something else, a better defense. I don't know. But she's saying, my client won't testify. And now you're holding my client's behavior, which was so damning in her own statements, and her silence, she says, against her. But that's not really. It sounds like she's getting cold feet. I mean, let's listen to it one more time. She's like, how am I supposed to go up after this? Now I'm supposed to create a defense? They have a consistent defense from beginning. They have a consistent story from beginning to end that explains all the evidence. Now the jury's going to expect me to explain all the evidence. I can't do it, Judge, especially since my client didn't testify. Take a listen.
Thank you, Judge. The comments being made in the closing argument of the state, and I don't like to interrupt closing, so I apologize for that. But there have been several comments that have been made that are burden shifting and commenting on my client's right to remain silent. She's stood before this jury and said that the defense has some other version. She said this in a text, but now they're saying something different. We don't have an obligation to answer any of this. She's insinuating to the jury that we're going to come up there and provide her version of events. She chose not to testify.
Mr. Cappleman, any argument concerning this?
Ms. Adelson has made adoptive admissions and has suggested other alternative theories that have been developed through cross-examination. I'm entitled to comment on those theories.
Concerning this, Ms. Fulford, as I've heard the closing argument and the evidence, my recall of it and my notes as well as to what occurred during the trial, there were adoptive admissions as it relates to statements that occurred during Charlie Adelson's trial. While she has not testified, the prosecutor has not made any direct comment on her not testifying in this trial. Also, as well, it is clear she has no burden to prove anything. The state is entitled to argue reasonable inferences from the evidence in the record. We will take a break at this time. If the defendant needs to use the restroom, bailiffs, please take her. If anyone else needs to, please stretch your legs or use the restroom at this point as well. Ms. Cappleman, on my clock, you have 35 minutes remaining. You can be seated. The objection is overruled. Ms. Cappleman, you may continue with your argument.
When the bump happens, you get to observe this defendant and her son in action working the problem. Neither of them would ever just lay down and let themselves get victimized by anyone. The bump is an actual recorded example of how these two act when they're threatened by an extortionist, in this case a blackmailer, and it's the complete opposite of how they say they've been acting before in the previous extortion. Several other things to note about this. Let's just compare like the two extortions, the prior one and the one with the bump. So when the bump happens, they resist, right? They don't open their safe up. It's only $5,000 compared to thousands and thousands of dollars they've been paying. $5,000, they don't pay. They resist. They take action. There are in-person meetings between Charlie Adelson and his mother, Charlie Adelson and Catherine McVanowa, and eventually with Dad too, about the bump and what to do about it. The defendant eventually downloads a recording app and records a call to the would-be blackmailer. So she records this call, an action that wasn't taken in the 2 years that they were being extorted previously. Charlie tells Ryan Fitzpatrick about the bump, although he never mentioned being extorted over the previous 2 years to Ryan Fitzpatrick. They investigate the bump. This defendant questions every aspect of the undercover. His look, his words, his behavior. You know, it's done like that, it's not done like that. Charlie enlists Catherine McVanowa to find out who it is and to handle it, right? Charlie says he's not going to take it lying down. He threatens Nazi shit if they mess with his family. Katie, I don't care what I spend. You'd better kill him because he's going to be a big problem. If he can't do it, I'll have someone else do it. Now, these guys want an...
I mean, it's really like a Shakespearean tragedy or something, like Lady Macbeth. I mean, Charlie getting more and more armed or going to kill more people to silence them. I mean, just all to protect this Adelson family because they couldn't, they had to have what they wanted. They had to win. And I was really pleased to see Georgia Cappleman talk about this in closing. That winning was so important for this family. They couldn't lose. They had to be winners in their social status. They had to have the best jobs, the highest paying jobs. All their values were wrong. Stuff, social status, most important. And boys' feelings, boys being permanently damaged for life, well, they won't even remember. I thought that was so telling when Jeffrey Lacasse said that Wendy Adelson had asked him when children, the jury couldn't consider this, but when children start remembering things, they think they won't remember it. Well, whether they remember it or not, they're going to be missing their father for the rest of their life. It's just a wound that doesn't heal. Ditto what the Adelson family did to Dan Markel's family and everyone who loved him.
Extra $5,000, you're going to kill him when you've been paying, I don't know how many, $100 and some odd thousand over the past 2 years. You weren't killing anybody then. They don't pay the money. If Mrs. Adelson has been blindly writing these checks every 2 weeks for 2 years, and her son has been paying additional monies each month on the layaway plan to the extortionist, and they've done nothing to investigate it, nothing to report it, nothing to stop it, but now they're going to launch a full-scale investigation over $5,000 more dollars? They don't call out Catherine Magbanua. According to Charlie and this defendant, they've been paying Magbanua now for 2 years, or at least funneling money through her. And here Charlie is talking to the person that's been collecting that money over all those months. But at no point does he acknowledge in that Dolce Vita recording or even allude to this long history of payments he's been making to her. This long history of extortion that's been ongoing through her. While they're still in the restaurant, Charlie gives Magbanua instructions. Say my friends have no idea what you're talking about. And frankly, I don't know what you're talking about, but the name sounds familiar of who's incarcerated. So I'm going to give you something as charity to help the less fortunate, but do not contact these people again or they're going to the police. The whole time you're talking, just say, I don't know what's going on, and only use the words help and charity. Charlie proceeds to give Magbanua a whole lecture on blackmail, which is pretty ironic in light of the fact that his defense is she was blackmailing me or extorting him. And these are just a selection of the incriminating quotes from the Dolce Vita recording that you all heard. After the meeting with Magbanua at Dolce Vita, Charlie calls the defendant in call F and tells her he had coffee with a friend and gave her some good relationship advice. Well, at this time, Catherine Magbanua is living with Sigfredo Garcia. Relationship advice. This means he talked to Katie and she's going to talk to Garcia and they're going to
They've got to arrest Wendy next, says Carol. I can't wait for that trial. I think it's going to be as shocking to see Wendy in handcuffs if it happens as it was to see Donna in handcuffs. How many times did we watch that arrest footage? I have it as my opening. I still don't get tired of it. It's still so shocking, the untouchable Adelson, Donna Adelson. I mean, she really walked around like it just wasn't going to happen. Even though it's really fascinating to know that Donna Adelson was writing her daughter and saying, I'm next, but I know what to do. I won't let it happen. I mean, is there any way that essentially she was on a no-fly list. It wasn't official no-fly list, but anytime she would have traveled, the DA's office would have known that. So there wasn't any great time to leave. I mean, it's not like I was just talking to Maestro about it the other day. I was like, do you think she could have left during Charlie's trial? Do you think They would have been so consumed with Charlie's trial they would have missed it. Yeah, there's no way to get out of there. It reminded me that any kind of travel would have triggered law enforcement.
Handle it and deal with the problem. Donna seems to understand this from the use of the term relationship advice. In call G, she's less sure than Charlie that this is the police. That's his theory. She's worried it might not be accurate. She says she has a different theory. He assures her repeatedly it's being handled. There's nothing to worry about. Don't freak out. Magbanua does not want to make that phone call, though, and neither does Garcia. And you hear him pretty emphatic on that wire that he's not making that phone call. But everybody starts lying to each other about having called it because everybody wants to reassure the co-conspirator up the chain that it's all good. I'm handling it. It's not going to come back on us. Charlie expresses concern that if they pay the money, they'll create a monster that will demand more and more and more money. And the defendant replies to that exactly. So these calls go up and down the train cars, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Donna to Charlie to Katie to Garcia and back over and over again. In call R, Charlie is telling Magbanua that he has a very nice gift for Garcia's birthday. So if we think about his defense, the defense that this guy is extorting him after he on his own went and killed the ex-brother-in-law, he's going to buy a birthday gift for the guy? The man that he knows killed Dan Markel? And Donna says this is the truth. The truth is out. Once Charlie and the defendant finally decide for sure that the bump is an undercover as opposed to a real gang member, bad guy, you have never seen two people so happy to be under investigation for first-degree murder in your whole entire life. They convince themselves that they're untouchable. It's just the FBI fishing. They don't have anything on us. If they had anything on us, we'd already be at the airport.
I love how and then she pauses. We'd already be at the airport. Here's a really great short that Maestro did. I love how she says, right before this, hold on one second. I've never seen so happy to be under investigation for first-degree murder. I mean, her humor is great in this. But she's right. Never seen someone so happy to just be under investigation for murder. Just relieved, so relieved. And they convince themselves they're untouchable. And that if the FBI had something, they'd be at the airport. I think I can. It's a little short that Maestro made.
I know you already testified about this, but does an innocent person say if they had any evidence?
Right. Katie's saying it's the police, and I'm saying that we're innocent. They're not going to have any evidence to show we were part of something that we were part of. If we had any part of this, we'd be going to the airport right now. And I
Isn't
still
it
say
true,
the same
Doctor,
thing.
that they're not going to have any evidence because you were careful?
No, because we weren't a part of this.
You were smart.
No, we weren't a part of this.
You walled yourself off from
I was
the
sure
killers.
they're not going to have evidence to show I did something I didn't do. So we're not running to the airport.
And you're untouchable, right?
Donna Adelson was arrested right here at Miami International Airport on the jetway as she was getting ready to board a one-way flight to Vietnam. That's a country without extradition to the United States. Now she's in custody in Miami, waiting to be transferred to Tallahassee.
Okay, there we go. Strangely, she's at the airport. She may have done something. She's at the airport. Let's get back to Georgia Cappleman's fantastic closing argument. We're on the tail end of it.
Thrilled about it. Even on the call that the defendant staged and recorded to the undercover where she's proclaiming her innocence, it's pretty interesting the words that she chooses. For example, she says, "I'm out of the loop." How odd is that statement? It implies she knows there's a loop and she's not in it. The evidence has shown that the co-conspirators in this case were all on a need-to-know basis for their own protection. That's why Catherine Magbanua wasn't shown the murder.
That's an argument I didn't even think of. So when Donna's talking to the undercover officer, she goes, "It's not me. It's not me. Really, I'm out of the loop." Right? She goes, that means she knows there is a loop. And then she talks about how they talk like train cars. It's such a slick and brilliant way to tie it in, all in.
Instructions. That's why.
I mean, that the co-conspirators talk like train cars and that they walled each other off from each other. So everybody was nobody was in the full loop. So Donna talked to Charlie talked to Katie talked to Sigfredo talked to Louise. Like a train car.
I know Adelson had any contact with the hitmen, and that's why the defendant didn't attend the murder meetings with Charlie Adelson and his mother. They were insulating each other. She was out of the loop on the stuff that the undercover was talking about. You know, my brother in Broward, Luis Rivera, she didn't know anything about Luis Rivera. She was out of the loop on that. But she was in the loop on Catherine Magbanua. She knew an ex-girlfriend met Catherine Magbanua. She knew that Catherine Magbanua needed to give relationship advice to deal with the problem with her baby daddy. She was in the loop on paying for this murder, and she was in the loop with Charlie to get a win for the Adelson family. In May of 2016, after the bump, the defendant stops writing checks. The bad guy comes up to you and wants more money. So what do? You stop writing the checks you've been writing for 2 years under some threat? She's still not going to the police, but apparently she's not scared anymore. She's going to stand up to him and stop writing the checks. Okay. Why? Isn't it because she's gotten spooked, because she's figured out this is law enforcement and they're getting close? In May and June of 2016, Garcia and Rivera are arrested. The news of this makes it all the way to Rob Adelson's operating room. When Rob next speaks to his mother, he says, "Hey, they got the guys. They arrested the guy that shot Danny." Getting no response, he brings up the matter again, like, "Did you hear they got the guys? They killed Danny." And she responds, "I've got to go," and she hangs up. That is the last time that Rob Adelson has talked to his mother. Because he knew, and she knew he knew. A couple other problems for the defense that I want to point out as far as this whole Charlie story goes. These are kind of mind benders, so bear with me. In 2016, after the arrest of Garcia and Rivera, but before the arrest of Magbanua, there's a text indicating, this is Charlie to Donna. Charlie says, basically that his lawyer was meeting with Garcia's lawyer. If Garcia acted alone and then extorted Charlie, why is Charlie's lawyer meeting with Garcia's lawyer? This is your extortionist. In fact, regardless of whatever the defense is, why are the two of them meeting? Unless they have common interests. And while Charlie's lawyer is at this meeting, he runs into Magbanua. Magbanua hasn't been arrested yet. She's up there seeing Garcia's lawyer. Well, why is she doing that? According to Charlie's story that this defendant adopted, Magbanua is not in on it. She's a victim too of Garcia, her baby daddy, who's a bad dude. Why is she up at his lawyer's office? And when they learn that Magbanua was up there, Charlie says, "Oh, my lawyer ran into Magbanua while he was up there. He said she was nice and pretty," and Donna says, "Just like all your girlfriends." Well, why isn't she saying What do you mean? Why is she up there? I thought she was a victim of Garcia, just like us. All right, so here's another text. This one's from August of 16. In this one, Charlie and the defendant are discussing a newspaper article in the Tallahassee Democrat, which talks about a drug dealer that the killers had contact with when they were here in Tallahassee from Miami. And somehow Charlie deduces this drug dealer is going to be the state's star witness. And they're basically spitballing alternative defenses. This is August of 2016. They've known supposedly who the killer was. The truth came out that the killer was Garcia and that they knew about it since the time of the killing. But here they are saying, well, maybe a drug dealer killed Danny and a drug deal gone bad. This is because the extortion thing hadn't been invented yet. The extortion thing didn't get invented until right before Charlie's trial in 2023, when he's trying to think of what he's going to say from that witness stand to explain all the evidence against him. Rivera gives a proffer. That's on September 30th of 2016. Magbanua gets arrested October 1st, 2016. You would think that if Charlie's story was the truth, he would be sleeping well for the first time in a long time, knowing that these folks that were taking his money and taking his mother's checks were off the streets and behind bars. But to the contrary, you've heard evidence that he started freaking out around that time, and so did the defendant. Right? His behavior became erratic. He became angry, paranoid, stressed. Per June, he got a second phone. He started sleeping with a bag of clothes by the bed. He started communicating with her via WhatsApp. In April of 2022, Charlie gets arrested. In that Dolce Vita restaurant recording, he repeatedly refers to the bump as a blackmail attempt. He uses the word blackmail on the Dolce Vita recording. But in trial, he switches that up to extortion, claiming that he and his mom have been extorted by the hitmen. That was going on since 2014. But interestingly, in October 16th of 2023, so just 7 days before Charlie's trial started, this defendant, Donna Adelson, Googled the difference between blackmail and extortion. And the difference is that blackmail is the threat to expose some dirt on somebody. I know something about you, and if you don't pay up, I'm going to expose the dirt. Whereas extortion is the threat to harm somebody. You don't pay up, I'm going to harm you. Obviously, when they developed this defense in preparation for Charlie's trial, they realized the term blackmail was not a good word for them because it indicates they were somehow involved. You got to have some dirt. Okay, it needs to be extortion, threat of harm. We're totally innocent. They did this on their own. They came to us. They extorted us. The defendant doubles down on this. So yeah, she said the truth is out, the truth is out. What does that really mean? Well, she doubles down on it when she writes that script for the witness, Drina Bernhardt, who she solicited to come in here and perjure herself to you all. What does she write in the script? Extort, underlined. The script is Charlie's story. She's again adopting it by writing it out for her witness that she's trying to recruit to come in and deliver it to y'all.
Is she adopting it or is she recycling it for her defense? My theory is that she had a hand in writing, a hand, if not, is the author of Charlie's defense. Now, did she write every word the way she wrote a script for Drina Bernhardt? Maybe. But did Charlie follow her script word for word? No. But Charlie was so well rehearsed for his trial. I mean, he had every bit of his story tailored to the evidence. It didn't all fit. Didn't make sense why he was telling Katie, have fun at the pool and, buying Sigfredo birthday presents, etc. You can't make all the evidence fit. I mean, Ridiculous. I mean, he had ridiculous excuses. But as long as he has an excuse, that's what Donna and Charlie thought. As long as they had an answer for everything, didn't have to be a reasonable answer. They thought you just have to have an alternative story. And that's reasonable doubt. No, that is not what reasonable doubt is. It has to be reasonable. It has to be just as good a story as the prosecution story, at least.
Which, of course, backfires. And according to the defense investigator who interviewed Bird, her first story involved the word extort. It's pretty unusual. Regardless of what you think of Drina and Bird, it's clear what the defendant was trying to do with them. I mean, when Drina Bernhardt had that script, and it read exactly like Charlie's whole story, with the exception of the part where he told his mom, it was in the defendant's handwriting. That was very compelling evidence that this defendant was trying to buy herself some witnesses. I do want to talk about one more piece that has to be dealt with regarding.
Wait, we just got to go back for a second. Don't they look like a losing team in a ball game? I mean, if you had to pick just by the body language, that's not. Who is that behind Selman? Does anyone know? All right. Someone asked, we'll just take a quick break. We're at the tail end. Someone asked for me to show my short that I just made about Donna's hearing. I think that's what you mean. So awkward showing shorts, but I will. I encourage you to go watch it. It's kind of not very helpful to me to show it. I would hope everybody would go watch it, give it a thumbs up, and leave me a comment on it. But this is about Donna Adelson regaining her hearing. Here we go.
I have a hearing issue.
Okay.
I have a problem. I evidently have very narrow ear canals, and the wax builds up in my ears to the point that, I have officers that say to me, "Are you deaf, Adelson?" When I don't respond to them, it's because I don't hear them.
My only short question to Donna, was it worth it? Respectfully, thank you.
Okay, that's the short. Okay.
I do want to talk about one more piece that has to be dealt with regarding this whole story of the extortion. And that's that Wendy wasn't in on it. Okay, there's a text November 1st of 2023. So this is after the truth comes out. This defendant texts Wendy Adelson, her daughter, and acknowledges that Wendy doesn't know anything about all this extortion stuff. And like, sorry, we had to keep it from you for so long kind of thing. If Charlie's defense was the truth, and Charlie and this defendant knew there was a threat to Wendy and her kids from the people that killed Dan, it's a little shocking that they failed to mention it to her. Instead, they let her and the boys move to Miami, where the bad guys were, and, you know, walk up and down the street without any extra protection or even knowing that the killers knew who they were and had threatened their lives and lived there in Miami. The defendant also acknowledges in this November 1st text at the bottom there. Next one. Previous one, maybe. Oh. Okay. On that text, which is in evidence, it says, get the quote, "You know I'm next." This is the defendant to Wendy Adelson. "You know I'm next, but that won't happen. I'll take care of that." An important insight into her state of mind when you're considering this evidence about her flight to Vietnam. All right, 11/6/23, Charlie's jury is deliberating. The defendant gets angry about Wendy sending prayer hands. I guess, you know, your brother's on trial for his life and you're sending prayer hands, an emoji. She says, protected his sister for years. Protected her from what? Would he need to protect her from the knowledge that they were being extorted? Or does it make more sense that the protection that's referred to is the murder, and the fact that this defendant is a little angry that Wendy doesn't seem to appreciate what she views as a huge sacrifice that her brother has made for her?
Right, your lawyer took good care of you. Did they edit that out of that? Because there's a sentence in there that your lawyer took good care of you. I wonder if they had that edited out just for, I don't know, for some odd legal objection. Chad X says, after the court verdict, Georgia walked through the gallery. Everyone moved aside to allow Dina, the warrior princess, I think that's what you mean, the warrior, in a red suit, through, followed by her mother. I saw her mother there. Yeah, and Sarah Dugan. Georgia slayed the dragon. Yeah, it was great. I almost included that in the short. You can see a little bit of that, Chad. And then it just got to be too long and ridiculous. I actually love gospel music. With the gospel music behind it. But yeah, originally I was going to use a little clip of that because she just looked awesome. You can see a little bit on the end of my Day 9 feed of her. That's funny. Thanks so much. Okay, we're at the tail end, guys. We have like 10 minutes
And her benefit. Wendy's not charged. This was all for her. 11/6/2023, Charlie is convicted. Nothing about the extortion defense adds up for Charlie, and it doesn't add up for Donna Adelson either. It's true that she did not pull the trigger. She's guilty of first degree murder as a principal, which we talked about at jury selection, about how a party who assists in the murder can be charged and convicted the same as the person that pulled the trigger, even if they're not physically present when the trigger's pulled, which is not disputed that she was not. And you all agreed to follow that law, even if you ended up not liking it, right? I don't know if anyone admitted to not liking it, but you don't really know if you're going to like it or not until you have to make a decision. If you don't like it, you still must apply it. I know that I can trust you to do that. We talked in jury selection about the difference between direct and circumstantial evidence. And it's true that this is largely a circumstantial case. You might recall my powdered donuts example. Had direct evidence that it was the kid not covered in powdered donuts, but we agreed that being covered in the powdered donuts was pretty good evidence that that's the child that ate the donuts. This case is not entirely circumstantial. I mean, she's covered in powdered donuts, don't get me wrong, but there is direct evidence as well. And I want to go over those. To Rob, when told that he'd already spoken to the police, she says, "Well, you don't know anything anyway." That's direct evidence. You can consider that as direct evidence. To Charlie, after being handed an article about Dan Markel's murder, it involves both of us. It involves the two of us. Number 3, 44 checks to the killer, signed by Donna Adelson. Catherine McVanoa admits she was in a plot to kill Dan Markel. And she got 44 checks, and they were all signed by this woman. Next, that license plate number. She had the car, make, model, and license plate in her 2014 planner. Her statements to Bird, she admitted she did what she was accused of. The script written by this defendant in this defendant's handwriting for Drina Bernhardt to come in here and deliver to y'all about stuff that wasn't true. She also speaks in code. Innocent people do not speak in code, ladies and gentlemen. And consider the things she didn't do. She didn't want to talk on the phone. She didn't want to talk in the apartment. She did not want to send a picture of the bump flyer to Charlie. She didn't say the name of Dan Markel anywhere on that wire. She did not say his name. Dan, Danny, Gibbers, that asshole, nothing. Why not? And she didn't go to the police. Nice, normal, Jewish grandmother approached on the street.
So now she's repeating, she's going back and she's reiterating some of her major points. If she was given a piece of paper about Dan Markel, why not say it's about Dan Markel? Unless you're evading the police. It's something I didn't think of before. Just like I didn't think of when she says, "I'm not in the loop. I'm not in the loop." I didn't think of that she had to know that there was a loop.
About a murder and an extortion attempt. She didn't go to the police? Why not? After Charlie's found guilty, the defendant sends this text to Wendy Adelson. "Your brother protected you for years. Now you are not guilty. Your lawyer took very good care of you. You can bury me in the dress that I bought for Lincoln's bar mitzvah." Does not sound at that moment as if she's totally committed to attending the bar mitzvah.
Jackie Fulford's so bummed right now because that was a crux of her defense, is that she's coming back for the bar mitzvah, guys. Jewish grandmother wouldn't miss her grandson's bar mitzvah, but she would leave the country. She wouldn't even show up for her son's trial. She's going to show up for her grandson's bar mitzvah. She's not coming. I would think she barely went out since Sigfredo and the bump and everything like that. I would think that she's not on the party scene in Miami. I mean, her friends testified, or her friend Ron Gutterson testified that he gave her and Harvey, meaning Donna and Harvey, his place because bloggers and journalists were, the media and bloggers were bothering them. Really? Or was it just a place that she was so paranoid about being picked up that they gave her basically a safe place to hide away from the police? I think that's more likely.
You heard that open line call where she's making plans to either flee or kill herself. She is distraught over the verdict. And she's distraught over the knowledge that she's next. The defense has tried to sell you that her emergency fast track visa and one-way ticket to a non-extradition country was a vacation. On November 7th of 2023, this defendant Googled a list of U.S. extradition treaties. She was looking for a non-extradition country, and she booked a ticket to one with a stop in another non-extradition country. She applies for a fast-track emergency visa for Vietnam. I wanted it the fastest I can get it. She indicates a 30-day visa is not sufficient. She requests for the longest visa, which is 90 days, which is past the bar mitzvah date. She tries to get Wendy to help with business assistance. And when Wendy doesn't respond, she ends up asking her friend, Annie Cunningham, who y'all met in court. She says, I can't say exactly why, but we need you guys to come here, both of you. Wendy's not responding to us, and we have an issue that we cannot discuss over the phone. Why can't you discuss it over the phone? You're just going on vacation. Annie responds, basically, just say the word. When they leave for the airport, Harvey leaves this note dated 11/12/23 for Wendy regarding what is needed to sell some property, a gun.
Right. I used to have a picture of that gun. I still have it. Maybe I traded it out for other things. This might be it. Yeah, Wendy. This M11 gun, and can only be sold with the paperwork. Contact Alex if it's to be sold. Love, Dad.
Donna makes notes in her planner to have Wendy have the lawyer tell Charlie where they are on the lawyer's private line, so the call will not be recorded. Why not? Y'all are going on vacation. You're coming back. You're not fleeing. There's also a note in her planner to cancel disability insurance. That doesn't seem like something one does when they're going on vacation. There's a note, tell Wendy due October expenses, child support through mid-November 2025. They're presumably for Charlie's son planning to pay child support 2 years in advance. So this is made in 23. All right, November 13th, 2023, the defendant is arrested trying to board a one-way flight to a non-extradition country. I mean, y'all decide if it's a vacation. This is a conspiracy. I mean,
right. We just wanted to clear our heads. I said, honey, I have one son who doesn't talk to me. I have another son who's close to being dead. And my daughter's doing this. I just need to clear my head, but only with a one-way ticket, and I only can clear my head in countries with no extradition treaty.
This took a lot of thought and effort. It's not a typical murder case. The defendant and her son set this up in a way that was designed to protect them. The main benefit of the structure of this conspiracy is that each party can insulate or distance themselves from each other. The primary risk of a conspiracy is that you're doing it with other people, right? You can get caught. Somebody can squeal. Somebody could give you up. And that's why the conspiracy is not shaped like this. Rather, they're not all huddled up together. They're going to be more like train cars. This is the way we see the communication flow throughout the course of the conspiracy. The best way to insulate yourself from your co-conspirators is to organize the conspiracy like a train car with each car only communicating with the one in front and the one behind. That way, if someone gets caught or cooperates with law enforcement, they won't have enough information on you to give you up. And it's also very important to position yourself within the conspiracy such that those that have the most information on you are those most loyal to you. And that is exactly what Donna Adelson did. To be guilty of conspiracy, it's not necessary for the defendant to say any particular word or do any particular act. But in this case, she did do that. We have all those words and acts that we went over that directly tie her. They are direct evidence tying her to this conspiracy, plus all the powdered sugar dust. Don't let the way she thought she was going to get away with this be the way she gets away with it. Render a verdict that does justice. Find her guilty. Thank you.
Brilliant, 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 brilliant. I'm going to end this episode the way I usually do, with a victim impact statement. This is one of my more favorite ones. I think it's a nice way to memorialize Donna Adelson's conviction. This was written in 2019 to the Honorable James C. Hankinson. So these are victim impact statements from people who knew and loved Dan Markel. We got Phil and Ruth Markel's victim impact statement ahead of Donna Adelson's actual sentencing. I don't think they want to come back, fly back, spend more time and money on murderer, now convicted murderer Donna Adelson than they have to. So this starts out, I met Danny in the summer of 2005, the year I graduated law school and moved to D.C. to begin a clerkship. It was a strange time for me, no longer a student, but not really anything else. Buffeted by aughts, the gnawing need to repay student loans, tick-tock, the need to make friends, to find someone, figure out whether this whole law school run has been a waste. A friend from law school, knowing I knew no one in D.C., told me I should meet his friend Wendy. I did and enjoyed her company. But it was Danny who took the lead, seemed determined to get me fitted with a life. He hosted me at their apartment for Shabbat dinner and fed me, introduced me to all sorts of prominent professional contacts and to eligible Jewish men. I was a stranger in a strange land, and Danny knew just how such a person should be treated by opening his home, making them feel cared for. He seemed to believe himself endowed with an outsized set of talents and capacities, and he was. His charge then was to find those in need, share with them what he had. He was the most presumptuously loving person I have ever known. He never asked if you wanted or needed his advice, interest, or love. He just assumed you did. In my case, he wasn't wrong. In the years that I knew him, there seemed to be almost nothing beyond his power. Right out of a law firm, when blogs were just getting going, he started one of the most prominent and popular for law professors, having only just received an academic post himself. He was a consummate and natural host. A few months after I met Danny, he ran into Zach, an undergraduate he mentored while in law school, at a wedding. He harassed Zach by phone to get on a plane from Los Angeles and fly to D.C. to take me on a date. The plan was audacious and Danny relentless. It was also just the push Zach and I needed. More than 13 years and 3 kids later, I marvel still at the power and reach of Danny's endless capacity for love. But it was a blind spot, too, as all strengths are. I have no doubt that what propelled him into marriage so quickly with Wendy was his irrefutable belief that he could fix any problem and answer any challenge. That she didn't seem to share some of his values with regard to religious observance, or even that she seemed reluctant to marry him. She broke off their engagement at one point when we were all still in DC, seemed to him merely kinks to work out, not impediments to a happy married life. On October 9, 2012, soon after Wendy took the kids and left him, he sent his vast number of close friends an email. He told us that he had come home from a work trip to a ransacked house, that Wendy had left and taken the kids, but that he was determined to win her back. He concluded with this: "You all know this, I'm sure, but remember, everything wonderful is also and already fragile. Love mightily while you can." It was just like Danny, really, at the bottom of life's oubliette, fretting over what he might impart to the rest of us. I called him soon after receiving the email and opened with, "Just in case it doesn't work out, I've got a girl for you." I thought it would make him laugh, and it did. The irony of my finding Danny someone after he had found someone for me. It just so happened that a friend of mine's sister had recently divorced, but then he started to cry. "What's going to become of my boys?" he said out loud, more to himself or to God than to me. Their connection to Yeshitic is already so attenuated. What's going to become of my beautiful, magical boys? I assured him that he was still their father and that he would be fine. A great dad is a powerful thing, even after a divorce. He would surely remain a primary influence in their lives. What did I know? All deaths are a loss, but I can't help thinking Danny's measures far greater than most. He gave love so generously from such abundant store. He never quit tending his friends, offering his help. Our loss is profound, but his boys' loss is infinite. They would have received the lion's share of all that he was and whatever he had. They don't even know. Sincerely, Abigail Schreier. That is what I have for today, guys. Please hit the thumbs up. Leave me a comment. I get so much out of your comments. Support the channel. This is a listener-supported channel. You can send me a Venmo. Thank you, Tammy, for your Venmo. I appreciate it. Buy me a coffee. Thank you to everyone who's bought me a coffee. Or you can become a Patreon member and get access to content you won't find anywhere else. Have a great night, everyone. Thanks so much for listening and watching with me. See you tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern.
Oh, Donna, what a stitch you're in. You plotted a murder 'cause you wanted to raise your daughter's kid. Tallahassee is just a stop on the way to civilization, Miami. You can't get away from that. Two-toe, tay-toe, hoo-ho, you know the guy you pay, and you can't get away from that. Oh, Donna, what a stitch you're in. You thought jail was just for the little people, but now you're so blankets with the locked up crew. You're a grandmother in lockdown, and your one-way ride to freedom you blew. Oh, Donna, what a stitch you're in. Your family are exiled from the social circles you swam in. We all know you never made that banana bread or offered to babysit for Dan, but you'll soon be making license plates and thinking